Well, we're going to have hopefully a fun time today. I really appreciate Jennifer inviting me and kind of setting all this up. So she did all the hard work. I just get to come in and hang out and have fun and eat a little food with y'all. So, so hopefully we're going to have a good time today. What we're going to do is it's going to kind of split up into two different parts. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the science of mindful eating. Talk about what it is, why it's helpful, why it's healthy, and hopefully give you a little bit of tools that'll help you as you eat, in the future. Because the cool thing about mindful eating that is kind of taking the world by storm. The reason is it's really common sense, but what it really boils down to is how you eat your food, not necessarily what you eat. And what we find is that if we eat our food in a certain way, what we eat actually becomes a little less of an issue. And that means that even if you're not eating the healthiest of foods, eating it in this way will make you get more out of your food, get more appreciation from your food, and also help you be healthier and help you function better, and hopefully help you enjoy your food, enjoy your life a lot more. And we're going to talk a little bit about contrasting this between mindful eating and dieting, because that's one amazing thing about mindful eating is it's really kind of the opposite of dieting. So it's a good thing. So we're going to talk about what the science is behind it, talk about a little bit about how it works, and then give you some tools on how to do it. And then Jennifer's going to lead us in a demo of what this is all about. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We got some good food this morning. So I'm going to start out with this quote. It's one I found that I was looking at mindful eating stuff, and I really like what it said. It said, most of us don't overeat because we're hungry. We overeat because of family and friends, because of packages and plates, names and numbers, labels and lights, colors and candles, shapes and smells, distractions and distances, cupboards and containers. And as I thought about that, I thought that's really interesting. It really makes a lot of sense, because a lot of what we tie to eating in the wrong way really has nothing to do with the food itself. In fact, almost every client that I deal with when I'm doing counseling and nutrition, and when we're talking about overeating or weight loss or all these sorts of things, it's never the food. It's never about the food. I've never found somebody whose true problem with overeating was actually about the food itself. It's always the other things that tie into the reasons why we eat food, when we do, how we do, the way we do, and how much we do. And so before we can really talk about mindful eating, we got to really contrast it with what is the opposite of that, which is mindless eating. Okay, so mindless eating is really, unfortunately, I would say what most of us do. Whether you try to eat healthy or you don't eat healthy, most of us don't really think about what we're eating. Some of that's ingrained. Some of us may have grown up working in such a way that you only got 15, 20 minutes to eat. You got to wolf it down and get back to work, okay? Or maybe if you're in the military, you got mess hall and you got this amount of minutes. You got to get it in, get it out, and get going. Or you are working and you just don't want to quit, and so you work at your desk, or you work. You eat while you work, you eat while you drive, you eat while you watch TV. And so mindless eating is really what happens when a lot of different things going on. One is we intend to eat past the point where we're full, so we're kind of ignoring our hunger signals or hunger cues. Another thing is we eat because our emotions tell us to. All right, so when we're happy, sad, bored, angry, etc., we eat when we're alone instead of as a social event. And that becomes sort of a mindless thing. We eat foods for comfort. That's a big deal for people who really use food as a coping mechanism. It's a comfort thing. We also multitask, and that's a really, in our society today, that is probably one of the biggest things that both quote-unquote healthy and unhealthy people do exactly the same way, is that all of us are too busy to sit down and actually eat a meal. And so we multitask. We do it while we work and drive and watch TV and buried in our phones, as all of us do. We're just buried in our phones most of the time. And then we're also considering a meal as a means to an end, which is not always a bad thing, but it can be a bad thing because you sort of are looking at the goal. You're not really enjoying what's in front of you. And then finally, we eat when we're not hungry. In fact, there are a lot of people these days who really honestly do not know what hunger is. We're going to talk about that a little more today and talk about how to differentiate and understand what real hunger is. It sounds crazy, but we're really blessed in this country, and almost all of us, except for, if you were on the street and you're truly homeless and don't have food in front of you, almost everybody in this country can eat anytime you want, any way you want, and have it right at your fingertips, whether it's in your refrigerator or in a vending machine. We've got food all the time. And so eating when you're not hungry is a big issue, and one of the big things that separates mindful eating from mindless eating. And we're going to talk a little bit about those cues. So that's kind of what mindless eating is. Then if we're looking at, okay, well, what is it about dieting that's different from mindful eating? Honestly, in a lot of ways, they are exactly the opposite. And so that's why when people come to me and we talk about, okay, what's the plan going forward? How do we sort of create healthy habits? I try to get people away from this dieting mindset, because in my experience, it has always backfired. I really don't ever see it work. And most people come to me after they've tried 1,000 diets and failed. And, it's understandable, because diets are not meant to work. And I hate to say that, but that's really true. They're meant to restrict something for a time, but they're not meant to be a lifestyle. So the difference is dieting is all about willpower, conformity, external cues. Okay, what's my weight doing? What's my figure looking like? What's somebody telling me about this, et cetera, et cetera. Looking at weight loss. What's the goal? Where am I getting to on that? What can I avoid? What is it I can't eat? It's very rigid. It's counting calories. It's restrictive. It's depriving. It's denial. It's a quick fix. You're fighting the food that you really want to eat. It's really a trap. And almost everybody, because it's really our human nature, we look at dieting as really the enemy. Okay? None of us really want to diet, right? I mean, it's really a pain. And so that whole mindset, it sets you up for failure. And that's really the problem with it. It sets you up for failure. And so what we try to do when we're talking about mindful eating is to shift the mind into a different mindset so that you look at food differently. Mindful eating, in contrast to that, it's about empowering you. It's about you trusting your body. Okay, we're going to talk about what that means. Talk about listening to internal cues. It's focusing on a different goal, enhancing your health. It's focusing on accepting where you're at, integrating things that are where you are to get to where you're going. It focuses on quality instead of quantity. Focuses on flexibility, being satisfied that all foods are permissible. It's releasing you from that bondage of being locked in and denying yourself and trying to restrict yourself. So it's changing the way you look at food so that you can approach it a little differently. And it is a lifestyle. It's a way to celebrate food, because let's face it, most of the foods that we are going to go eat here next week are not going to be healthy, okay? Okay, everybody goes to Thanksgiving and you eat all these good foods. Why are you eating those foods? Are you eating them for the food itself? No. Nobody's eating them. It's because it's tradition. And it's because you're around family. It's because, and this is a big key, we're going to talk about emotional and mental hunger and all this. You're associating that food with memories. That's really what it's about. All food is tied to memory. And almost all food is tied to smell, and smell is the thing that stimulates memory. And so it can be, you can walk into a kitchen and you smell a certain pie baking, automatically you're back to 5 years old in your grandma's kitchen. And you think, oh, this reminds me. And so then that is a good feeling. And then you enjoy that food more because it reminds you of your grandma. Okay? There is nothing wrong with that. That's how we're designed. The key is understanding that and knowing how to celebrate that. So then the real deal is this is about liberating you to be able to step out and make these decisions in an empowered way that's going to help you be your own guide in making good decisions. So it's about being your ally. So then what really is mindful eating? Mindful eating, if we look at we have a little graph here that kind of shows you a little circle. Mindful eating, I like this quote, it says, mindful eating is eating with intention while paying attention. Mindful eating is eating with intention while paying attention. And so it's the idea of really focusing in on, okay, why do I eat? When do I eat? What do I want to eat? How do I eat? How much do I eat? And then what am I going to do with the energy I get from what I eat? Where do I go and invest that energy? And then the cycle repeats. And so it's about being mindful of all those different steps. So we're going to go through those briefly in a minute to kind of give you an idea of what that means. But it's about really being mindful when you put food in front of yourself, not just grabbing your fork and picking it up and going to town. Okay? It's about, okay, why is this here? What is it? How am I going to do it? How much am I going to eat? And really thinking through the process, and you would be amazed, and I'll tell you some numbers here in a little bit, that you'll be amazed at how much of a difference that'll really make. So we're talking about why and when do we eat. That's the part where we got to figure out how to differentiate hunger. Okay, hunger, emotional hunger and physical hunger are two very different things. And this is a really neat graph that I encourage y'all to kind of read over and think about, process through which of these you tend to actually experience the most. Because emotional hunger is a hunger that comes on like that, just that fast. Okay, it's there, and you're like, oh. And then on top of that, you got to satisfy it right now, or your sugar's going to drop, or you're going to feel angry, or you're going to feel irritable, aggravated, and you just got to have it. And then you're craving usually comfort foods, usually some sugar-fat combo of something, and then you usually wanting to eat it quickly in private. That's a red flag. And usually you're craving something very specific, and you're not satisfied. Okay, so you're really not satisfied with a full stomach when you're done. It's just something as a quick fix, and you're not really fixed. And then after eating it, usually you have a feeling of guilt and powerlessness. Okay, that's that emotional eating cycle. That's emotional hunger. And so the whole thing actually started when you did not assess why it was you had that trigger in the first place. And so we've got to talk about what that means. Physical hunger, on the other hand, is something that comes on very gradually. You start to feel it, then it gets a little stronger, and your stomach starts to growl, and you start to get that real gnawing in there if you're actually really hungry. And that is a physiological hunger that is a real and good thing. It is also one that can wait, so it comes on gradually enough, and you say, oh, I'm getting hungry, but I don't have to eat right now. That's real hunger. Okay, is a lot of food sound good to you? So if you're truly hungry, and I tell my kids this all the time, because they come and they don't want to eat supper, and then an hour later, I need a snack, I'm starving. I said, well, if you were truly hungry, you would have eaten what I put on that plate in front of you. So, I can't help you. I'm sorry. And so that then means if you're really hungry, there pretty much anything somebody puts in front of you, a banana, a salad, a bowl of soup, a steak, all of it sounds good because you're actually hungry. And then you're able to take your time eating with good company. You stop eating when you're full because you no longer have that actual physical hunger. And then after eating, you don't feel bad about yourself, okay, because you knew it was something you were really satisfied, it was a real need. So that is a process that when you think about why and when you want to eat, you really want to take that into account and understand what's going on there. So then the what do I eat? That simple question is kind of tied to the first two, and that really is something you want to ask on a lot of different levels, okay? So when we talk about why, then we kind of get back to this little triangle here of head hunger, heart hunger, and body hunger, excuse me. So I'd say mind, body, and heart. You've got three different things going on there. Mind, you've got psychologically saying, okay, I'm stressed, I need to eat, okay? And so then you need to think about, okay, well, what's stressing me? Because if it's really stress, do I really need to eat, or do I need to do something else? Maybe go for a walk. Okay, body hunger is how do I feel? How hungry am I really? And then that'll help gauge what you need to eat there. What do I actually need? And then heart hunger is where the emotional stuff comes in. What am I feeling right now? Okay, so am I feeling good and hungry and kind of satisfied and at peace of, okay, this is great, I'm really hungry, I want to eat? Or am I feeling upset, sad, lonely, depressed, angry, frustrated, all of that? If that's the reason why you're reaching for food, then you need to back up and reassess, because that is not the reason why a body would want food. That's your emotions wanting food, creating a physiological desire because of all the chemicals going on when you eat food. When you eat fat and sugar, it releases dopamine. Fact. Okay, so dopamine is released when you eat sugar. That is a feel-good. That's the same thing that's released when somebody says, I love you, or when you give somebody a hug. It releases a little bit of oxytocin as well. So those things come in and they make you feel good. So the reason why these emotions make people crave certain foods is because they instinctively already know from experience that when I ate that food, I felt better. Problem is with the food, it doesn't last. doesn't last long at all. Usually it's only about an hour, and then you're going right back down into wherever you were. The problem is because we didn't deal with the emotion, then you're going to want to eat again. And so you've got to understand, you've got to really be able to assess those things and say, okay, if this is an emotional thing, what else can I do that might better satisfy this than eating some food? You know, do I need to call a friend and talk and go hang out and visit with somebody that I can care about, and you know, or go get my, you know, go out and exercise because I'm really just stressed. I just need to release and vent some stuff. You know, so those sorts of things then it helps you decide, what do I eat or do I eat? And that part of the process is a big, big, big step. That simple act of asking what will really solve a lot of those physical and emotional decisions. And in the middle, I like that graph because in the middle it's got that little triangle that says choice. Okay, you have a choice. I do know that a lot of people who struggle with binge eating, for example, really struggle with these feelings of being trapped and feeling helpless to get out of the depths, feeling like I really don't have a choice. I'm just trapped. I've got to reach these things. And ultimately, again, what it always comes back to is you do have a choice, but if we give you tools that'll help you make those choices and you're more aware and mindful of why you're doing what you're doing, that is empowering. Okay, why it is I reach for a Snickers bar when I'm feeling down, if I know that it's because that is releasing a chemical in my brain to make me feel better, and that makes me realize it wasn't the food, it's the chemical, it's the emotion. If I can deal with that emotion and release those chemicals in a different way, then I don't need the food. Food's not needed, so we can do it in a different way. So really, really important to ask the what. And then when you don't just grab whatever's in sight, it does lead to those better choices. So the why, the when, the what, then the last part, or the big part, I guess, as we talk about mindful eating, the practice of mindful eating, that's the how. How do I eat? And so I wrote down a few different, just simple little list of things that can help you with that. And these are just simple cues to keep asking yourself and sort of create a good environment for you when you're eating food. And if you do these things, this is what leads to the really amazing results, no matter what kind of food you eat. So this I hope is encouraging, because even if you sit down and eat the nastiest junk food on the planet, eating it in this manner is more nutritious and better for your body. And I'm going to tell you some of the science behind that as we go along. So number one is eating when you're hungry, only when you're hungry. Just that one thing makes a huge, huge difference. When you're not hungry, your body does not want to digest food. That's just the fact. If you're not hungry and your body has not emptied out what you ate before, it's still trying to process the last food you ate. It's not ready to process more food. So if you eat more food on top of it, you are giving your liver a whole lot of work to do. It's not going to be happy, and it's going to create a lot more inflammation, a lot more physiological problems, and you're not going to digest the food because it's not going to create enough enzymes because it's still working on the food you hadn't finished digesting. So only eating when you're hungry is the rule number one. Next thing is being thankful. It is incredible the difference this makes, okay? Whether you're a believer or whether you're someone who just sits down and says, hey, I'm just so thankful for what's in front of me, giving thanks and being appreciative for the food you're about to eat actually releases a whole host of chemicals in your brain that actually prepare your body to receive that food and make your body eat it and digest it better. Okay, it actually takes your nervous system, the act of thankfulness, actually takes your nervous system from a sort of keyed up, stressed area into a peaceful area. And so your nervous system, just to give you a little bit of science on that, you got two different nervous systems. One's called sympathetic, the other's parasympathetic. Sympathetic is your fight or flight, like if you're running from a bear, okay, you need to climb a tree and get out of the way. Sympathetic goes into overdrive, adrenaline just booging, and you running. Heart's pounding and all that. That's great because it'll save your life. The problem is if you stay there or any point where you're in that sympathetic state, you cannot digest food. Literally cannot happen because your body takes blood away from your digestive system and pushes it out to all your muscles so you can run. So if you actually try to eat, if your boss screams at you and then you go in the other room and you try to eat, you will not digest your food at all because you're so heat up from that fight or flight, your body couldn't digest food if it had to. So getting yourself into the state where that nervous system switches over to the parasympathetic, which is the relax and the calm, the resting state, then your body's ready. And then it's able to actually wake up. It sends all that blood back to your organs and your digestive system, and then you can be ready to actually eat some food. So thankfulness, being at peace before you start eating is a huge, huge deal. And I've had times at work, I really started to realize this. I started to do this. Even if I only have a little bit of time to eat, I'll always sit before I eat, and I just rest for a minute. And I think about, okay, what's the day looking like? All right, what I have coming up, I'm just going to let that go for a little bit, get my mind off of it, get out of my workspace. Okay, I'll go eat on a park bench if I have to. I get away from the work. I sit down. I get calm. I relax. I think about something else. I give thanks. And then after all of that, I'll eat my food. Because I know from experience, if I didn't do that, I'd feel indigestion. I'd feel all these other issues and symptoms because my body just wasn't ready, wasn't able to do it. So don't overestimate how much of a difference that'll make. So then next thing is, third thing, stimulate your senses. This is incredible. I mean, we are some pretty incredible beings the way we're designed. You got your 5 senses, and all 5 of those senses actually create digestive juices before you even eat food. One thing that they remember, Pavlov's dog, he was a big psychologist that did all this study with the dogs and all that. One thing that he found, and we all know this from experience, is dogs actually will salivate in expectation of a meal before you even put it in front of them. So if you start feeding them the same time every day, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, next day at 11:55, they are dripping. Not even, you ain't even brought them the food, but they know it's coming. And so they are just dripping and they're ready. Okay? We're the same way. If you think about that Thanksgiving meal, you go start getting that digestive system woken up an hour beforehand. You could be like, all right, we're ready to go. Okay? So then, on top of that, when you see food, you smell food, it actually, again, starts to release those chemicals. Your liver starts to produce enzymes. Your stomach acid starts to go up and produce more stomach acid, so it's getting ready to receive the food. And then by the time you taste it, you're already going. And when you taste it, your saliva actually has enzymes in it. It's creating that stuff. So when you taste the food, it's already got a head start, a jump start on breaking down the food before it even hits your stomach. So all those things make such a big difference rather than just jumping in, grabbing the first thing and throwing it in your mouth before you even had a chance to look at it. Okay, you do that, you missed out on all that preliminary stuff. So taste is a big part of it, taste and smell. But one thing I want you to understand about taste is your brain is brilliant. Your brain is incredible. What you taste when you put food in your mouth sends signals to your brain to start creating the hormone to process that food. So what I mean by that is, let's say you eat something sweet. Your body tells your brain, hey, I just ate something sweet. Your brain says, oh, sends a signal to your pancreas. Hey, pancreas, make insulin. Insulin's already there waiting on it when the food hits your stomach so that you don't have these spiked blood sugar. So it's got that signal already going. When it hits your stomach, the pancreas already is secreting the insulin. And then when it gets into your small intestine, it's already breaking it down and telling it where to go. Take it here, take the sugar to the cell. Let's go, get it in the cell. And it's so efficient. This is awesome. But it can also work backwards. If you drink diet drinks that are sweet and there's no sugar in it, it'll mess you up because the sweet taste stimulates the insulin the same way. Your body doesn't know it's not sugar. It's going to stimulate those senses and say, oh, send out some insulin for all that sugar in what he just drank. Oh, but it was a Diet Coke and there's no sugar. Oh, no, now what are we going to do? We're going to suck it out of the bloodstream. Now we got low blood sugar. Now I'm hungry. And now you got to eat. And so what we have found is that people who drink a lot of diet drinks tend to eat as much or more than people who don't. And so it really doesn't work if you use it for weight loss. So be aware, along with that not only can it not help with weight loss, a lot of times it'll throw off your appetite because you're making yourself hungry when you shouldn't be. It'll throw off your blood sugar, which can mess up your energy level. So you want to be aware of the fact that the taste of food has a big impact on your body for good and bad, depending on whether you're giving it real information or you're trying to trick it. So very important with that. Number 4 then is chew your food. Okay, so chewing the food, you'd think this is obvious, but my wife and I were talking about this yesterday, And I'm a very slow eater. I just am, always have been. Part of it is I don't think I have great chewing bite or whatever, so I have to chew my food a lot anyway. But we laugh and joke about it because it takes me such a long time to eat because I chew my food a lot. But we were talking about how many times, and she's like, I'm not sure I chew my food 10 times before I swallow it. Most people have never thought about it. Have you ever timed yourself? Try it. We'll see what happens. Let's see where you're at. You want to be chewing between 25 and 40 times per bite. Okay? That's about where you should be. Because if you don't give the saliva enough time to mix with the food to give it some enzymes before it goes down. So then you're just relying on your pancreas, and that wears it out over time. So you need to let your mouth do what it's designed to do to help out the rest of your organs. And then by chewing it, again, you're giving those hormones in your brain more time to release the signal to do what they need to do to break your food down once it hits your stomach. So chewing your food is very, very important. Does a lot of good stuff internally. Number 5 is eliminate distractions. And I talked about this at the beginning. This is number 1. This is my biggest problem for sure. All of us tend to eat while distracted. We either eat while we're watching TV, we eat while we're on our phone, we eat while we're reading a book, we eat while we're driving down the road, we eat while we're at our desk working. The list just goes on. The problem with that is your body can't do 2 things at once. Okay, it's either driving or eating. It's either watching TV or eating. It's either reading or eating. And it's not that these things are bad. And, for example, some people are people who love to read while they eat. I'm one of those. I just feel like it's just very relaxing to read while I eat. But it is much better for your body if you will eat for 5 minutes, read for 5 minutes, eat for 5 minutes, read for 5 minutes, instead of trying to mindlessly shove food in while you're reading whatever's on the page or on Facebook or whatever else. Because if you don't do that, your mind's somewhere else, and you're missing out on half of this process. You're missing out on the signals your stomach's trying to tell your brain. Okay, so distractions, getting away from distractions, actually stepping away from your whatever it is, and giving yourself time to eat, and focusing on what you eat makes a big difference on how you're going to digest that food. So then number 6 is slow down. It just kind of goes along with the chewing. If you do all these other things, you will slow down. But ultimately, you have to slow down. And this is the number 1 thing for people who are using mindful eating for weight loss, is you've got to slow down, because if you don't eat slowly, your body doesn't have time to tell your brain that it's full. Your brain takes about 20 minutes to catch up to your stomach, okay? So your stomach is filling, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger like a balloon, and all of a sudden it reaches a certain fullness, and it releases a hormone. Again, incredible. And it sends that to your brain. It tells your brain, hey, I've had enough, I'm full. Only that is not a fast process. It takes about a 20-minute period for that to register and go to your brain. So one of the best things you can do for not overeating is just to eat slower and give yourself time. And it might be eat half your meal, wait 10 minutes, and then eat more if you're still hungry. Or eat a plate of food, wait 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and then go back, and if you're still hungry, get some more. But most people will find that you actually aren't as hungry as you think you are, and you actually don't need as much as you think you need. Because that act of eating slower allows everything to catch up, and then allows you to get the right amount of food. It's a very, very important part there to really hone in on what's the right amount of food that I need at this point. And then the last thing is breathe. Sounds simple, but a lot of us really don't take time to breathe. If you're slowing down, you're probably going to breathe more, but breathing, particularly belly breathing, and getting that oxygen into your digestive system, it makes a huge difference. It really improves the blood flow to the digestive system, which then allows it to do what it's supposed to do. Without enough blood flow to your stomach, it can't make stomach acid. One of the number 1 things, without exception, and there's 2 different schools of thought on this, but people with COPD always have reflux. I have never seen it be an exception in my life. Every single COPD patient I've ever seen also had reflux. And some people will say, well, one comes first and the other comes first, but all of them will say, when I breathe better, my reflux is less. Now, there's 2 things going on there. One of them is that their lungs are hyperextending, trying to get enough oxygen. It's pushing pressure on the stomach, making it smaller. But it doesn't really make sense for reflux, because reflux is about the bowel and stomach acid levels. So what we think is probably going on is that COPD gives you chronic oxygen shortage. And so they can't get enough oxygen to the digestive system. So they can either breathe or they can eat, but they can't do both. And it's a real struggle. And I remember that, I've seen that with so many patients. One of those was my granddad. I remember as he got worse and worse towards the end of his life, that was one of his big struggles, was that it was too hard to eat and breathe. And the problem is if you don't eat, you can't continue to live because it burns up so many calories. And so that sort of struggle is what a lot of times will get people at the end of their life. So breathing, big important thing, really very helpful. So that kind of hits the how. And then really the how much, if you're eating in that way, the truth of the matter is your body will tell you how much. That's where this is empowering, is the how much allows you to, if you're slowing down, how much is you eat till you're satisfied. And your body is incredibly good at knowing when that is, if we give it the time. So eating till you're satisfied means slowing down, listening to what your stomach is saying, listening to what your body's saying, and then stopping. Enjoying every bite, so savoring that food, you get more out of it. So that helps you to then not need as much food. So again, all this process, if you're not wolfing down your food, you're digesting it more, you're getting more out of it. So the nutrition, the amount of volume of food you need to get the amount of nutrition you need goes down because you're more efficient at absorbing it and breaking it down. So you don't need as much food. So that's really important. How much, another very simple rule, again, this goes back to our brains, is use a smaller plate. Very simple rule. But I mean, it's incredible. Across the board, what we usually see is if you take somebody from a small plate to a bigger plate, most people will eat 25 to 30% more, vice versa. You go down to a smaller plate and eat 25% less, and yet they still said they were fine and full. Is that not crazy? It literally had nothing to do with the food. It had everything to do with what your brain thought was how much you should have to eat. So using a smaller plate, a lot of times, a lot of things like for us, a salad plate now with our set is about the right size. So a salad plate is about an 8-inch, 9-inch plate. It used to be what regular plates were way back in the day. Now we've made our dinner plates like 15 inches, something ridiculous. And so, use a smaller plate and you'll eat less, and you'll be just as satisfied. And then the last rule is, and this is a real important, the Japanese were the ones who kind of made this very important or kind of highlighted this, and that was they said never eat till you're full. The key is it's not to never eat till you're full, it's to know when you're actually satisfied but not stuffed. Okay, so a lot of us think full is a different thing. A lot of us think full is like I'm stuffed as a tick, my belt is popping, I can't eat no more, okay? That's not full, that's stuffed, okay? We're not trying to stuff ourselves. The key is eat until you're satisfied, which means I'm no longer hungry, I feel good, I feel like, not stuffed, and stop there. And if you stop there, that one thing makes all the difference. Very big deal. And remember that when Thanksgiving comes around. This is a big deal. So the next couple pages are just sort of an infographic that you can kind of read on your own. I'm not going to go through it. It just kind of reiterates some of the stuff we talked about before. But one thing I will say is that mindful eating then leads to mindfulness in other areas. It's not just about the eating. Mindfulness is about being aware of all the things that you're doing, and plugging in and sort of being in the present, being in the moment. A lot of us are really bad about that. Something I struggle with is you sort of either you're goal focused into the future or you're reminiscing and regretting in the past. Very few of us actually live in the moment. And living in the moment and enjoying the sights and the smells and the sounds and the experiences where we are right now plugs us in, allows us to both experience life better and more fully, but also allows us to appreciate food and appreciate our bodies and listen to our bodies better. And listening to those signals is what leads to such good results when you do mindful eating. So just very briefly then, I mentioned weight loss earlier. What we found is that mindful eating, without doing diets, without changing the type of food you eat, just using the practice of mindful eating, we find that people are usually lose between 20 and 40% more weight than people who don't. Okay, that it makes a huge difference. And there's so many people, there are a lot of experts who do nothing but mindful eating, and there are books out there that I recommend you can get that talk about the practice of mindful eating for weight loss. At the end of the day, it shouldn't be about that, but I know that that's a big deal for a lot of people. And so the deal is mindful eating leads to weight loss without you trying to, because it's going to put you at the place where your body needs to be and wants to be. And it will find that equilibrium. Now, it's not a quick thing, but it's basically, you know, I've talked to many people who said, hey, I lost 100 pounds because I finally decided to push back from the table. You know, that was the one thing. They said, oh, I was just learning to push back from the table that really did the difference in the long term. Mindful eating is that, but it's a lot more than that. It's basically learning to plug into those cues that you know when enough's enough. You don't need food as a crutch. You don't need food as a coping mechanism. Using it and appreciating it and savoring it and enjoying it, but only eating it to the amount that your body needs and not what your mind and your emotions think you need. That one practice will fix most anybody's weight problem. And so it's a very powerful thing. There's a lot of research you can read on that. So I want to wrap up. There's a couple of neat little handouts here, just kind of a visual cue you can put on your fridge, on a magnet or whatever if you want. This first one is sort of I think kind of like a placemat. I didn't print it that size, but you could print it bigger if you link it on the internet. But basically, it just sort of reminds you here's the steps of what you're looking at, and getting away from the distractions, getting away from the things, the emotions, and learning to enjoy, sit down, slow down. So neat little tool that you can use. And then the last piece there is the mindful eating steps of here are kind of the basic steps that you would walk through if you're going to do mindful eating. Sitting down, clearing stuff away from you. In other words, giving yourself a peaceful environment, setting a place, using silverware. So in other words, basically setting yourself up for a proper meal, and just calming down, enjoying it, getting some good lighting, good music, and then eliminating. We have tried. We're still working on this, but we have tried to make a electronic-free policy for family meals, because number one, it's just distracting you from your food, but number two, it distracts you from the people around you. You don't plug in, we don't talk to each other, everybody's got their head down like this, and there's no communication, no socializing, and that's a real problem. I never thought that, but that's one of the primary problems of this generation, is that we're isolating ourselves by thinking we're social. We're doing the opposite. So getting that stuff away will really set you up for a good environment, and then you use those steps, learn to listen, and it works pretty incredibly. So I'm going to wrap that up there. Questions, or do we want to go ahead and go into the demo, or want to do I don't know what the...
If there are pressing questions now, we can do that. Otherwise, we can just go ahead and
Okay. All right, excellent. So we're going to do a little sampling and kind of practicing this a little bit. And then we'll do a little bit of question and answer, and kind of mingling and enjoy some food. So, all right, awesome, guys.
Thank you, Darren.